Guys, if you don't remember which X-Edit version you got, I'm going to show you two different ways of seeing that. One with X-Edit running, the second one without. If you're an X-Edit, go to connection, right here, version. There's your X-Edit version. Now you know what version you're running.
And also, if you're connected, it'll tell you what your firmware version is too, if you're connected.
I'll say up here.
Yeah.
Now, what if you're not running X-Edit? Now you guys see my beautiful desktop. Go to audio, folder opened up there. Notice I have X-Edit 4.0 and 4.3. How do I know which is which? Guys, I don't know about Apple, so this is Windows. If I hover, it shows you there. That's one way. Also, right click, properties, go to details, product version. Now you can easily quickly define if your X-Edit, because if you've changed it or relabeled it or anything, it's not going to tell you what version it is anymore. This is how you guys can tell quickly if your X-Edit is up to date or not. And I do recommend having multiple versions of X-Edit. The reason I have 4.0 and 4.3, there is sometimes I'm doing stuff where the DCA, I do not want DCA spill on my screen or even having that possibility on my screen. So I use 4.0, but 4.3 is when I do need to start dealing with DCA spills. So now you guys know how to view what version of X-Edit you're doing, either by hovering, right-clicking, or just going to setup, and it's right there all the time. By the way, IP addresses. It does show you the IP addresses of
the computer.
Your computer.
Yeah.
And it will also show the IP addresses of the consoles.
Yeah, once you're connected. And the reason Marshall's saying I'm going to hate him for that, because my belief, and we all have different opinions on this, guys, and that's what makes the world go around. I keep everything updated. And Marshall brought out a real good point. You can go up there and you can actually read the bug report. You can see what they've done to it. If you're having a problem with the rack or any digital mixer, or you're having a problem with the software, and you go in there and you look at that bug fix and it says, boom, well, that's related to my problem, so I'm going to go ahead and update. It's all depends on how you are with running your own system and the things that you're going to do. It's worse than a culinary school. You put 15 engineers in the same room and you're going to have 15 different ways of doing it. And you're just going to have to sit here and, just like with these videos, you're going to have to go through, CK, I think, said it, or Wasato, it's like a buffet. Take what you want and leave the rest. But you're going to have to design your own style of doing this, your own way of doing this.
Going off of that, like I said it earlier, when I was talking about how to get FX into mix buses. Some singers prefer it, some don't. Audio has two different main things, and I'm going to briefly mention this because this is a big point of contention, because I know we have a lot of users that have hardly ever done mixing. Great for you guys. We all start somewhere. But I'm going to say two things, mainly for you guys. If the pros, please hear this as well. There's two things about audio engineering you guys have to understand. 90% of it is subjective, which means, like what just Dana said, it will be different from engineer to engineer. 90% of it is. 10%, however, is hard objective facts. Like what we were talking about earlier with getting your gains set up correctly. That is an objective truth that you must do gain control and setting up your overall levels correctly. That is not a subjective thing that each engineer would do different. There is subjective ways of how you accomplish that fact, yes. But getting gains set up correctly is an objective fact that every engineer will tell you. You have to get gains set correctly. If you don't, it messes everything up. Same thing when it comes to certain ways of doing outputs. There is objective ways, but yes, there's subjective ways to accomplish that. But note that 90% of the time, the way you see me doing some of my routing changes, that's for me. That's how I want it set up. This is how it works for me. Dana may not want it that way if he's doing dual console.
Brother, Dana couldn't do it that way that you do it. I'm going to tell you guys right now. That's why I asked Marshall to come over to our community. Absolutely, bar none. And I know a lot of people in this industry, and I know a lot of people that work with these mixers. And every single time I see Marshall make a comment on something, when you were talking about sending the aux ins to the other monitor. I believe that was me that told them it wasn't possible, just so you know. Okay. And I tell the people in my community, I don't have that community because I know everything. There was a reason I started that community, and it had nothing to do with knowledge. I'm there to learn just like everybody else. And your style of routing this, and when you say that, I'm going to have to watch this video quite a few times to really get in to some of the advanced, and that's exactly what they are, brother. You've got some advanced features going on here that 90% of the people will never use. It's just that they don't need it. They're going into a club, they're working in a church, they're running sound, they want to come off the USB and just simply run a streaming or broadcasting line out. They want to come out into a submixer. All that's easy, because it's mostly standard. But a lot of the things that you've talked about here today, that's not standard.
Nope.
And it's good to know.
And so I'm going to give you guys 2 short little topics to finish off. One question I hear a lot about, if you guys have never paid attention to this page, this is a fun page I'm about to show you. If you go to output delay on your routing page, people are like, why would you ever want to do this? Why would you want to delay outputs? Okay, in some larger rooms, you're going to have your mains left, right. But about 3/4 of the room, maybe halfway in some cases, you're going to have another set of speakers sending out the same source as your main left, right. But if you do not do what's called delay timing, it's going to sound like a train wreck because you're not time aligning the sound from front set of speakers getting to your second set of speakers. It's called slapback echo, and it sounds like horrible distance. So the people in the back of the room are going to be hearing things twice, and it's going to sound utterly bad.
Yes.
This is how you fix that. Let's say 1516 is my, let's do this. 1314 is my main outputs, the ones that are at my front of stage, right? 1516 is now my delay set, my secondary mains. Click this button, that engages delay timing. Now, what do all these numbers mean for you guys? Don't pay attention to the milliseconds that much. That will make your head hurt unless you know the mathematical formula. Please don't pay attention to it. If you know the mathematical formula, knock yourself out. For everyone else.
For everyone else, it's a tape measure.
Behringer was nice, exactly what Dana said. It has your distance here. Tape measure out and set the delay time. So, for instance, we'll say in a larger room, I am 50 feet from my mains to the delays. What I need to do then is go up here and get to where it says 50 feet. And I'll describe what this is doing. There we go, 50.3. You can't get 50 feet exactly. It's close enough. You're going to be like, isn't that going to sound worse because I've now delayed everything as it shows you? 44.7 milliseconds. For anyone that doesn't know about delay timings and delay with the audio and the human ear, 5 milliseconds, you can start to maybe perceive it. Anything over 10 milliseconds, you are audibly going to hear the difference. So why would you want to do this massive delay timing now? Time alignment. By doing this, what's going to happen is at the time the delay speakers are now sending the signal out of their cones, it's going to be the exact same time that the sound from the mains is arriving at that speaker. So now you are sending both sound waves at the exact same time. That is how you get rid of slapback. Slapback is caused by having multiple speakers sending the same signal at different positions in the room, not being time aligned. This is how you guys get away from that.
And you'll see this a lot in foyers. You'll see it a lot in balconies. You can go down to the local hardware store, pick up the laser measurers. You can set right there from one speaker to the next. I think you can get one for $35, $40, made by Bosch. I think it's good for either 75 or 100 feet, and you just stand there and just point it, push the button, and it tells you right what it is, and then play through your system and see what adjustments you may need to do.
And then here's the other thing. What I just showed you was delay timing for delay speakers. There's a second reason why you would want to mess with delay timings. Well, two other ones. The second biggest one. Let's deactivate these and say, like a normal setup. 15, 16 is your mains. Let's say we have subs. In a lot of cases, sometimes subs are hidden under the stage. Sometimes, due to construction constraints, subs cannot be at the front of the stage presidium where the mains are going to be hung. Subs can end up being behind the mains. So again, this is subs, right? You're going to want to delay the mains. And we'll delay them by, like, say 6 feet, which is about standard. Now your mains are time aligned to the wave coming from your subs because the subs are further back. In delay timings, the item that is the furthest away from the source gets delayed. Remember that. So if you have subs further back in the room than your mains get delayed to match the subs. And then from there, if you still have delayed speakers, the delay speakers timing doesn't go to the mains, goes to the subs. Remember that. Always go off furthest point to the first source. So in the reverse case, say your subs happen to be in front, like say some festivals, you would then delay the subs. Basically, all this delay timing is doing is allowing you to get time alignment in your speaker system. In the bigger systems like festivals or installed sound, this is going to be done by a DSP, digital sound processor. The EQ for the speakers are also going to be done in that as well. The delay timings will be done in that because they will have been finely tuned way more than this. For basic uses, this will do immensely better for your sound. The other third reason I mentioned you would possibly want to do delays. Live stream. Yes, you heard me. You're going to want to delay your live stream audio sometimes. Why would you want to do that? Audio processes faster than video, people. Always will, always has. Therefore, sometimes with some capture systems, the A10 Mini is particular about this, by the way, if you're not going straight into the A10 Mini. If you're going from your board to an interface to OBS or something like that, you're going to have to do this, guys. You'll delay your audio. And this time you will pay attention to milliseconds, by the way. You'll delay by a couple of milliseconds to match the video frame rate. Because like I said, video takes slightly longer to process than audio. There's more information there, guys. Even at 1080, there's still way more information. 48 kilohertz stereo audio.
Right.
So guys, if you're hearing your audio come in before the video by a couple of frames where you hear the audio and then you see the lips moving.
And we've all seen those movies.
Yes. This is how you fix that. Not some movies where you have the mouth moving, then the audio. That's happening. Remove the delay in the audio. That means your audio is being delayed too much. But if hear audio first, then see the lips, delay your audio to match the video. That is why you would delay a live stream. Now, the last thing I'm going to mention, I hear this asked a lot. I haven't seen anyone ask it in the X32 rack users yet. I've seen it asked in other user groups, so I'm going to mention it for those that want to maybe know this. As much as we love the X32s, sometimes we find that the sound of the built-in FX units just don't do what we want. Or there's not an option in there for what we want. Say we have, from our recording days, or someone gifted the church a really nice set of outboard gear. Best example I'll use. Everyone loves the distressor unit. One of the best rack-mounted compressor units that has ever existed on the market. Live tour guys love these things. I can show you how you would do that. Let me load up my fresh scene so I can go back to a blank out setting. How would you guys do this? Because normally you guys know buses 13 to 16 are feeding FX units 1 to 4. How do you guys get around that? Simple. Turn off the FX units so they're not doing anything. Better yet, if you want, Choose insert, so you can't have audio going to them. There we go. We just turned off all the FX. Now you guys are probably wondering, why would I want to do that? I'll show you. We got to do a two-step phase here now. Go to your FX buses. Go to channel and send it output. Now, also, go to config. Here it is. Insert FX. Click that, it will insert. Notice you can choose your inserts. Oh boy, what is this? Aux. No, I'm about to show you. If you guys are physically using aux inputs, this will not work. I am sorry. But I can now go and choose all of these on. I can do aux 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, what have I just done? Let me pull up that photo of the backside of a X32, guys. Doesn't matter which one. I'm just going to pull up the rack.
Yeah, because they're all the same.
They're all the same. It's just location. Notice it says aux in, but aux out. Okay, everyone thinks that these two things are very different. 9 times out of 10, you are correct. They are done completely different. However, what I just did, if you guys remember the old school analog consoles and there's an insert jack, they'd have to use that weird Y cable where you could plug on one end of the Y, plugs into your outboard gear, and then the outboard gear's output comes back onto that Y cable to insert into your audio signal. We have just done the same thing with what I just showed you in settings. What that means is aux out. So move this out of the way. Go here. Move this picture back over. FX1 is now selected as aux 1. What that means is aux 1 output will plug into the input of our distressor unit. The output of our distressor unit will go back to aux input 1. You have now inserted external FX gear into a bus for your X32. So if you have external compressor units or reverb units like the Lexicon units, which the old Lexicon units are fantastic. If you wanted to use those with an X32, this is how you would do it. But like I said, if you are using the aux input jacks for Spotify, ProPresenter, or anything like that, it will not work. Obviously, you only have 4 FX buses you could ever do it at one time, or that's the most I would use. You still have 5 and 6 that you could use for ProPresenter, which should be more than enough because you could run Spotify on your ProPresenter computer. Just make sure both of them are not sending out at the same time, or it sounds like a garbled mess.
And I want to mention here, because we've kind of hit on this about 3 times now, and you folks have to remember the capabilities you have with the X and M32 digital mixers is really a lot more, if you're new to this mixing world, than was ever available at a price point you just simply couldn't afford it. And there are so many options that you can do, but what you cannot do is do them all at one time. And again, going back with what Marshall was talking about before, when you have your sheet and you start planning out, what do you want that mixer to do? You know, this is your job. You've got X amount of inputs, you've got X amount of outputs, you have X amount of functions that you want this mixer to do. And then you're going to have to prioritizing what those are. And and people will say, well, why doesn't it do this? Or why doesn't it do that? Why don't we have more buses? And I'm pretty sure the firmware is just about maxed out from what I understand. They really can't add a lot more to it. And I think a lot of it was taken up by this user in, user out routing. That was the last really big major thing that they did.
That, and then also people are going to say something, oh, does that mean the X32 line's getting discontinued with what I'm about to say? No. They knew that the X32 was reaching its limitation. we are starting to push everything we possibly can out of this console's processors. That is why the Behringer wing exists. Yes, I understand the wing still has some limitations, but compared to an X32 or an M32, it is far more powerful. Short example right off the top of my head, like Dana was saying, why don't we have more buses? On an X32, M32, you have 16 mixed buses, but if you want to be stereo, you have to link 2 of them together to get an output for stereo. You've now burned 2 buses out of your 16 total to get stereo mix bus. That's not how it works on a Behringer wing. By default, the mix buses, all 16, are stereo processable. You just have to assign the outputs for that, which means you have to assign, if you go look at the routing of a wing, if you guys want to take a look at one, it will say when you look at outputs, bus 1, and it will say bus 1 left, bus 1 right. All buses are stereo. The only way to make a bus mono is by selecting it in the settings and then only assigning the left. The wing fixes the limitations of an X32. But as Dana said, with the current limitations of the X32, it's still a powerful console. You still have all these possible options, but you have to choose what you want to do within the limitations that you have. I'm about to show another limitation when it comes to more powerful inserts. If physical rack board gear is not your thing and you want more, or in some cases, if you are using auxes, let's get to that real quick. Say you are using aux inputs, all 6 of them. What can I do that allows this to still work? Well, in some cases, we're about to show you something very weird. Let's see if I can actually get this to work. I've done this once before, so if I can't, I'm sorry, guys. If I remember correctly, there is a way to do this. Let me check. Think. Okay, you can't do it with the bus, but you can do this with a channel, per channel basis, guys. So go back to routing, change that back to aux ins. So say you have a computer and you're doing digital processing inside of that. Okay, yeah. So yeah, you would have to choose aux, but what you can do with the auxes is if you have them selected in routing as card, instead of using the aux channels, those insert points, go back to the mix bus, it's still aux 1. But because in routing, I'm telling the aux in to be remapped, that also holds true for this. So that means instead of going out those 1/4-inch jacks on the back of the console, I'm now going over the USB card. You're probably wondering, okay, that works for SINs. How does the return work? Same thing. Card 1 for your FX out to a unit would be, the return for that should be card 1 for the return as well. Same for 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Insert points, no matter if you're doing local or card via the remap trick.
And this would be for running plugins inside your DAW that you wanted to come back?
Correct. If you wanted to use your FX buses, if you're not using auxes, again, remember this preface, if you are doing this insert technique for auxes, cannot have already been using auxes 1 through 4 or 1 through 6 if you want to do all 6 for any physical local aux inputs. Keep that in mind. Going back to the limitation Dana said, you have to figure out what you want to do and what you can't. So we'll keep it simple. Say you do have an aux that you want to keep for house music. You have 1 through 4 you can use. Then in routing, you would just select card 1 through 4, which you're like, well, won't that still affect 5 and 6? No, it won't. If I look, it says card, 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 card. Now pay attention to this when I select 5 and 6. It still says aux 5 and 6.
Awesome.
But you do aux remap, the options that are above what you've selected, 1, 2, 1 to 4, the unselected options default to the local inputs of the console. That's a trick for you guys to know. But say we are doing this for going out to card. Whatever the card is, or whatever the aux insert is. So if you're doing physical outboard gear, just do the standard aux inserts. But if you're doing a DAW, like Dana said, card 1 to 4, select here, make it aux1. Since aux1 has been remapped to card1, it knows that the return should be card1 as well. You can then use your DAW to host. However, I mentioned this data the other day. Please look this software up if you guys are interested in doing this. Yes, I know about Reaper. I use it all the time. It's a great, low resource intensive DAW, not that expensive, does fantastic for what it is. Yes, you could theoretically use Reaper as a VST host for this. However, I recommend that you don't. Here's why. There's a software out there called Live Professor. Yes, I know it is almost twice the cost of Reaper, from 60 to almost 120. Hear me out why I say it's better. Live Professor is dedicated to being just a VST host. It has no recording capabilities. It has no playback capabilities. It's just for hosting VSTs. So it's more efficient at that. 2, for those of you that do different scenes per song, for different song, people leading, musicians coming in or out, Live Professor, you are going to want for this. Live Professor can do scenes just like your console. So if you're doing auto-tune, or if you have reverb units that get changed from song to song, or massive reverb changes like dry to wet or the sides, you can make those changes in Live Professor, save it as a scene, and go to the next song, make those changes to your effects units, save it as another scene. And you can have your scenes, your FX change by scenes in Live Professor. You cannot do that with a DAW. The only DAW on the market that supports scene changes like that is Studio One. But trying to use a DAW for a VST host is like trying to use a hammer as a bottle opener. Is it gonna work? Yes. Was it really meant to do that? Is it gonna be the easiest option? No. That's why I implore you, look into Live Professor. Now here's where things are gonna get a little different. Let's get a little bit more fun with our FX inserts, shall we? So here's where it gets fun, guys, if you want to do more than just send returns, which is what I just showed you. There's another option for FX. I'm going to do this briefly. If you guys want more information, reach out to me. Let's put all of these off so it's normal again. Okay, Live Professor, Reaper, however you're hosting. What we're going to do now is something different. Let me go to Setup, Mixer, Initialize, so I can actually do this correctly. Okay. Go to Routing. For your inputs, choose card, not your physical inputs. Now go to card out. Choose that as if you had your stage boxes locally connected and you're going to use them normally. Now what you're doing is sending all your inputs straight out to the card to go into your VST host. And the VST host is now sending straight back into all of the channels. What this means you can do now is you can do per channel FX inserts. So if you wanted to do plugin EQs, dynamics, reverb per channel, this is how you would do that. Now here's the biggest trick I got to tell you about that. If you guys do that, go to scenes, bring this over, and you have snippets. If you're going to do full insert channel, create a snippet that is assigned on the full size consoles or the compact. Assign this to your user section. X32 rack users, I'll put an annotation if I figure this out for you. But create a snippet that is for your routing and click save. Click here, click save, then we'll type in full insert. Now I'm going to go back to routing. My inputs. I'm going to choose back to my normal stage boxes. Go back to show control. Keep routing selected. Save. Type in normal or whatever you want to know. So now what I'm doing let me move this off of the screen and you guys can see the changes as I load. Here's the routing. If I go full insert and hit load, I'm instantly back on card for full insert.
No, very good. That's a good explanation of watching how these snippets actually come in and take control.
And now I'm going to hit normal. Watch what happens. Hit load. I'm back over here. Why would I want to do this? Full insert mode. If your computer is to crash, even if you're not processing FX on any of your channels, if the computer crashes, you've lost all audio now. Completely. All. Because everything has to go through the computer and back out. You need a quick snippet that you can grab that puts you back to the channel sources going direct to the channels from the inputs. If you don't do that, it's going to take you, again, back to saving time. It will take you 40 seconds to a minute in some cases for the fastest of us to reroute your channel sources back to being where they should be if you didn't have full insert. So create a snippet so you can quickly change if you have, oh crap, my computer crashed. You just reload that snippet of normal or local recall, whatever you want to call it, and you've now taken the card inserts out of the equation. If you do not have that snippet, it will cause problems because everyone knows computers love to crash and at the most inopportune time.
Yes, they do. And if you're working with the X32 rack, and if you can imagine running 32 channels, you're going to be turning that selector knob 32 times, pushing it in, going over to or going into your routing, you know, and trying to get all of this stuff realigned. In the meantime, you've got your service going on, you've got your gig going on in the club, everybody's looking at you, and it's like everybody else, we're human beings. And depending on the amount of pressure that you're used to working under, I can pretty well guarantee you this will be some of the heaviest when you have to start turning these. Again, we're talking about the rack when you've got to start turning those selector knobs and trying to find your way back up to override what your inputs are.
Even if you're using Xedit live, because Xedit is, like I've showed earlier, you can use it live. It's a great tool. Or even if you're using the remote apps, like, again, this is getting down to a quick subjective thing. Dana prefers Xedit, which is the Behringer official Android and iPad app. I myself choose Mixing Station. Again, personal preference, but we could do the same exact thing we need to do from our iPad or tablets. One last thing I'm going to mention before I end this for you guys. When I just showed the full insert, I mentioned Live Professor. I know some people are going to immediately question me about waves. Yes, I know about waves. Yes, you can use the SoundGrid card. And someone mentioned this in the X32 rack users the other day. SoundGrid card in a console. Can you use it without a server? Yes, you can. You just cannot offload your DSP processing if you were using something like multi-rack, super rack, or studio rack as an insert in Live Professor. To do SoundGrid DSP, you have to have a server. Now what that means, yes, you can still use SoundGrid if you want to go card in and out. It's much faster than USB in some cases. The thing still comes across with having that snippet. And the biggest difference of why I mentioned Live Professor over Waves, even if you're using Waves plugins, people, Super Rack and Multi-Rack, great software. You are locked into Waves plugins only. So if you have Slate, or if there's 3 plugins that you've downloaded from Reaper and you want to use them as something else, with Super Rack and Multi-Rack, you cannot use them. Live Professor can see and use any and all VSTs that are installed on your system.
And there are thousands out there for free.
Exactly. That is why I say Live Professor is worth its money. Yes, it is slightly expensive, but the fact that it is a dedicated VST host, does everything you need, it's the better option. So quick recap before we let this video end for you guys. Dana will have this in different chapters. If you guys have questions over any of the chapters we've talked about, we have talked briefly about the differences in the consoles, differences in the stage boxes, the differences in IEMs, P16, DP48, and wired in-ears. We talked about routing, the default, and how you can make some changes, how you can do user in versus the standard blocks. how you would get FX to your broadcast mix over a bus or via USB if you're doing that way. We also briefly talked about the ADAT ports and what you could use them for. We decently covered dual consoles, which very gets confusing. We've also talked about why you would want to do output delays. We've also talked briefly with aux remap with some of our stuff and why you would want to remap your aux input channels. We talked about your DAW broadcast of how you would do it on USB versus the infamous 9630 and why you would want to do either or. And lastly, we just talked about FX doing physical external inserts or waves or whatever via USB. If you guys have questions on any of those sections, leave a comment on the YouTube video. I'll try to be paying attention to the comment sections on Dana's channel. Or if you guys see this in a post on the X32 user group, comment,
or any group.
Or any group, yeah. Comment, and we'll try to help you guys out. This whole long video session was just to help you guys out learning how the advanced routing of the X32 can be done. So if you guys have any questions, just reach out. We're here for you guys.
And Marshall, I want to throw one last thing in there before we end it. And guys, just like everything else with audio, there is so much information that's packed into this video. It's overwhelming. And the way to keep it from being overwhelming is to pick one small section of what you want that routing to do and concentrate on that part of it. If you try and take it all in, especially if you're new to the X and M32 mixers, you're going to be pulling your hair out. Okay. The best way to do it is the way the video's laid out. Learn the basic routing. Just simply, how do I plug my mic in? Where do I have my inputs? Where do I have the outputs so I can hear it come out of the system? And then concentrate on what part of the routing you want to work with, whether it be the specialized routing for using the USB out for your broadcasting or live streaming, or whether you want to think about setting up a dual console, because that's where you're going to have to start. Before you can set up the dual console, you really need to understand the basic routing. If not, it's like trying to learn how to do geometry before you learn how to add 2 + 2. It gets confusing real quick. And Marshall, I'm going to give you the last word, and then we'll go ahead and end the recording. We'll finish up here with a little bit after the show type of deal, and we'll go from there. I can't thank you enough. I want to say it one last time. As far as routing goes, just talking with you, looking at your responses, and number one, more importantly, is listening to the actual audio that you produce, brother, in your church is by far some of the best I've heard at any concert or live event I've ever been to. And I've been doing this for 47 years.
Well, thanks for that compliment, Dana. But yeah, I was going to say, to just finish off, guys, like you said, a lot of the stuff we have gone over, I've gone over some very advanced stuff. Dual consoles, Dana said it perfectly. It's like algebra versus standard geometry. If you guys do not get your minds over this stuff, don't freak out. You'll eventually understand it. And if you do get into dual consoles and you have a good understanding of the basic routing but are still having issues, again, reach out. I'm happy to help. I know Dana is as well. And with that, I hope this was useful for you guys.
All right. Take care. God bless. And we are out of here.